Welcome back to Arguing Agile. We had a podcast a while ago called Weaponizing Efficiency.
Yeah.
And now we're doing sort of a part 2 with a podcast we have titled Weaponizing Standardization. This podcast idea came up because I was in an interview where somebody asked me, I see that you've been through mergers and acquisitions. What is your opinion on standardization? Because a lot of times when you get integrated into a larger company, there's a lot of initiatives to standardize things and to sanitize things. And I can't remember the exact language the individual used in the interview, but it got me thinking. I was like, I do have some experiences in this arena to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And this happens, right? Whether it's an M&A or, a divestiture or whatever. I find that word hard to pronounce. But anyway, split up. Yeah, so this happens all the time. The company buying the other company will typically come in and say, this is how we work.
Yeah.
Everybody just assimilate, right? And so this podcast is going to delve deeper into why that's good or why that's bad.
Well, let's not make everyone guess about what side I'm on in this conversation, because I'm going to dive into point number 1. When you deal with standardization, the challenge of standardizing all of your software development teams or your processes or your processes, if you live somewhere, is that you stand a good chance of stifling innovation when you start laying down heavy processes that have to govern everything, and they have that word governance. Oh no, it's got to go through governance before we can start any new initiatives or explore any new technologies or do any cool stunts.
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say here is that the acquirer, the company that acquires the other company or merges, usually they're not mergers of equals, they really don't bother to get the context of the working situation of the other company. They simply come in and say, this is how we've been working. This is how everyone will be working, right? Yeah. So from that perspective, and from the point of view of the company that has just been acquired, you are stifling innovation because you're saying, get in line and do all of these things that we want you to do, right? Yeah. These are all maybe bureaucratic to some people, but this is how we need you to do things, right? These are the systems we need you to use, for example. So instead of coming up with a solution, right, you have to abide by what you're told, right? And that, I can see how that would stifle innovation, because you're really not doing anything new. You're simply going along with what's been imposed upon you. But, I would take the other side because we are arguing Agile.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, so you could say, look, the company that is being acquired, if they fall in line and work in the way that this larger company is dictating, perhaps, right? Then what's wrong with that, right? What's wrong with a proven way of working? Presumably the larger company survived and they are the acquirer. So they're going to say, do it this way, and we're right.
Well, let's walk through this.
Yeah.
Let's walk through this theoretical conversation for a second. And also, like, it doesn't have to be an acquirer-acquiree deal. It also, like, I've seen this after IPOs.
Sure.
For example, the company will bring in professional management, and the professional managers will say, oh, we need some standards. Oh, we need some standardization. Oh, also, I've seen it when, like, VP level, like C-level executive type of people change. Like, the operations would be a good example. Like, COO changes, and now, like, well, I need to know everything is happening because I'm operations, so I need to have my fingers in all the pies because operations needs to know everything. Or a new CFO comes in and says, I don't understand where all of the money is coming from, so I need to standardize all of the financing. Or where it's going. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely where it's going, yeah. I don't understand why some teams are small and some teams are big, but on paper, it seems like they're all bringing in the same amount of money. We got to, why don't all the software development teams have 4 people instead of 8 people or 12 people? Like, why are they all different numbers? I don't understand. This doesn't make sense financially to me. So they're saying, like, something doesn't make sense. So from that perspective, it's not an acquirer-acquiree position. It's just something changed in the management of the company. That's a better way to say it. So less challenging way to say something changed in the management of the company, and somebody's just trying to understand things.
Well, you bring up a good point with finance, because they will be looking for standardization from the perspective of saving money. Right. So they might look at it and say, you have 5 teams using this tool and you have 3 teams using this other tool, and why don't we just have one tool and then we can negotiate a better contract with the vendor, right? From an accounting perspective, they're not wrong. But what they don't realize is, these teams have evolved to the point where they've chosen the tools they need. So if you're going to mandate something on them, what are you actually giving up, right? And that comes back to the innovation piece. The teams that are forced to use a different tool for the sake of saving money, they may not be happy because that tool doesn't do everything they want it to do. So they're going to go along begrudgingly, right? And you'll have impact on motivation and all of that good stuff that happens when you tell somebody how to do their job, basically.
Well, you're steering us to talk about a topic here that is super important to me in product management, which is, hey, to go back to the acquirer-acquiree conversation. We've acquired this company over here that is very successful, and we want their customers or their line of business, or we want to break into this market or whatever. There's usually a reason to acquire a company. Yeah. And let's say, for example, like Brian and Ohm's development software company has acquired Brian's side business company, right? Brian and Ohm's software development company uses AWS for everything. Brian's software side company is Azure Cloud. So now that we bought the company, we said, okay, Brian wouldn't be there because Brian left the company because Brian's not sticking around through the acquisition. But the people that stayed with Brian's side project company that are now part of Brian and Ohm's software development company, who, by the way, is not owned by Brian and Ohm anymore. That got bought years ago. Several podcasts ago, that company got bought.
Yeah.
We can't have you on Azure because now we're cutting a check every month to AWS and we're cutting a check every month to Azure. You guys need to just migrate all your stuff from Azure over to AWS. So the product manager now in play, looks up and says, I have to do what? So basically you just gave me a mandate to standardize for the sake of standardization, because product-wise, it's going to be months of work to do that migration. And at the end of the migration, what financial benefit will my product gain? Nothing, right? Nothing. So as a product manager in that position, immediately, I feel like I'm going to get marked as the bad guy in this conversation, because I'm going to say, what business sense does it make to migrate us off of Azure Cloud just so we don't have this line item expense of our service on Azure Cloud? Because you realize whatever money you save from not having a second bill paying the Azure subscription, you're going to double your AWS bill because we're just going to move over and use bandwidth on AWS. So It's you're going to pay those costs. So really the only thing you're saying is my accountant that pays the bills at the end of the year has an easier time. So basically you've gone through this whole standardization effort so that some back office accountant has an easier time once a year.
They only have to pay one bill.
To pay a bill.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But I also think that there's this, from a product lens, right? If you have to do this, yes, it's a decent size effort, to say the least. What could you be doing instead, right, for your product? So, it's chalk and cheese to me, right?
Bringing in a lot of money.
That's right.
What I could be doing.
Evolving the product, exactly.
Or taking vacation for a month and not working at all.
That's worth a lot more than validating cloud platforms.
To me it is. I'm literally twiddling my thumbs at my desk. There's a million things I could be doing that will be better for my team than going through a big technology under hood change that gives no value to the end user, helps nobody in the company except for one accountant in the back office.
Well, as a product person who's forced to do this work, to consolidate CSPs, you really need to keep that resume updated because you're going to get bored.
At that point, if you're a good product manager, or even if you're a scrum master on your team helping product, you're going to be asking these whys. You're going to be digging. You're going to be doing 5 whys. Why do we need to migrate off of Azure to AWS? And if you're not giving me a list of these are the things that are available to you on AWS, or for example, there's some stuff that we have available in our AWS cloud on the back end that you guys are paying extra for that will drop off of our expense list. So really, our monthly expenses that you pay extra for because you have all these plugins or all these custom features or whatever that you've built, you don't need to deal with that code base anymore. Yeah. So if there are real gains, your logs won't be jammed with garbage, all this custom stuff, because you can use all of our modules that come with AWS. It's a ton of functionality that comes with it. You know what I mean? But let's pretend you're going the opposite direction. And Azure Cloud doesn't have sweet queuing systems or databases or auto rollout of environments and stuff like that for you. They don't do that kind of stuff. Yeah. And now you're going to have to inherit all that business. This is terrible.
It is.
This is an absolute debacle.
This can put a company out of business, potentially, if it's on a large enough scale, honestly.
But to bring us back to the point, and also to wrap up this category, is your team has innovated to figure out how to deliver a solution. And now you're saying, I understand that you have maneuvered and researched to find the solution. You don't get to discover anymore. You don't get to look for the best thing. We're just going to tell you what to use. We did a whole podcast on different people in the company saying, I know what the customer needs.
That's right. Yes.
Right? An ego can't be thrown up. Like, you can't raise the shields when you hear, how do you know? You can't see that as an existential challenge to your identity. You got to roll out the evidence and say, well, this team has done a very similar thing to what you're doing, and this team went down your path and found these limitations, and that's why, as a company, we all decided, if you're going to do an email solution, for example, we decided that this is the most secure method, and this is the way to do it, and we have tech leads can walk you through it and documentation and whatnot. Like, if you're going to standardize, like, there's a way to do it.
But those conversations have to happen, though. So oftentimes it's just an order or an edict, right? From the CFO says we have to do this.
Right.
And then you go along begrudgingly with it because you don't get that opportunity. You don't get the airtime with the CFO.
A dictate. Usually it's a dictate that comes down that says you must do whatever. And the issue with that, it leads us to becoming a monoculture. Person or individual or individuals or panel or body or governance board or whatever other things I've seen it disguised as over the whole career that I've had, it leads you to say these are the approved ways of thinking, and deviating from these approved ways of thinking is like not approved, not invited, and not welcome. So the problem with this is it leads to, like, rather than a diversity of thought with all the different people that are on our teams and all the different cultures that are on our teams, it leads to blinders in one way of thinking, and that's a big problem.
It is a huge problem. You mentioned the word monoculture or words. That's a real thing. That's a real thing because people start falling in line and echoing the same thing that everyone else is saying because you dare not utter anything different. So we end up with the culture in the organization becoming almost like monolithic.
It's uncontrolled groupthink.
It is groupthink. And people say, well, that's how we do things here.
Let me think about how I would challenge groupthink for a second. Like, even the example, like, I hate to keep going back to the exact same example of, like, what makes you think that this is a solution that we need. Why don't we explore the problem a little more? Diversity of thought starts in the understanding the problem realm. A lot of companies, like, that understanding the problem phase, like they seek to hotwire that understanding the problem phase and cut straight to, like, proposing solutions phase. And then the proposing solution phase, it's super easy to co-opt that proposing solution phase to say, like, well, solutions can only be proposed between the hours of 3 p.m. and 3:15 p.m. on a Tuesday in front of the angry review board or whatever, and you must stand on a pedestal where we can pillory you with fruit or whatever. Like, it sounds funny. Companies have review boards like this and steering committees that in order to approve things and have budget be reserved for new initiatives and whatnot, new ideas, basically.
Yeah.
You have to go through a big process like this. You have to go to a panel and state your case and fill out a big form.
Yeah, definitely. Groupthink is real, and standardization has a real risk of precipitating the culture into group.
This groupthink topic is super aggravating to me because it sort of takes on a life of its own. What you end up with is a layer of bureaucracy that forms just to keep the status quo in place. It creates process to keep itself alive. Like, I think of everywhere I've ever been that had, like, governance board. They love the term governance. I don't know why. The governance board or architect review stage or that kind of thing. It creates a layer of bureaucracy in the organization that purely exists to justify its place in the bureaucracy of the organization. That sounds super confusing, but the type of architect that sits on high and comes down from the mountain with the tablet written in stone of the requirements and, like, you must do this and you may not deviate from these things. This type of thing I think of.
Yeah, we've seen that, right? We've seen that in our lives, in our previous lives, right? Where these things happen. And yeah, to your point, I mean, oftentimes people who are innovators, they know that this is an uphill battle. They're going to have to go to these boards and defend their proposals and whatnot. So they tend to basically fall in line with the standardization that's there and don't go outside of that because their chances of success are limited if they even come to the periphery of it. Stay with the guardrails, or stay right between those the lane, right? And that's not really fostering anything new.
What you just described is like, well, now the people that succeed in this culture now are the people that won't challenge the status quo.
That's right.
The people that won't, like, when they see something that obviously is wrong, they're not going to be the ones that raise their head up and get smacked. You raise your head up to say something's wrong. The thing will probably get corrected, but you will get smacked for sticking your head out of the monoculture to be like, hey, I'm a little different. I don't think maybe that this is a smack. Like Google just got pinged with this in the news about their Gemini AI and images. They rolled back. I don't know if they rolled back or disabled their image generation. I don't remember what they did. Did you hear about this news story?
I remember hearing something about it, but I don't know what the outcome was.
There may or may not have been a big segment of the podcast where we played around with a certain images tool that was a lot of fun to play with and gave us some questionable images of historical figures that we had a riot looking through. Anyway, the point here is, in the bureaucracy, there is this layer of people who are there to justify their own jobs because they participated and perpetuated this layer of bureaucracy. And the challenge here, the arguing Agile challenge here, is there are people out there that will say that Agile coaches and Scrum Masters are part of the bureaucracy I'm talking about right now.
Especially internal ones. I tend to agree with that. But I just want to say, those people do exist to propagate their own existence, but they also exist to feed their immediate superiors what they've been used to. Right? This is what the C-suite wants.
Yeah.
So your managing directors or directors, or everybody below the C-suite, the middle managers, they're going to continue those practices because that's the path of least resistance for them.
But also, I have personally seen plenty of Scrum Masters that do not want to challenge the status quo. They just know that coaching the organizational level is
futile.
It's futile.
Yeah.
So, and they also know, again, going back to this monoculture point, new ideas outside of the status quo are just not accepted. They're not appreciated, and you start getting labeled as a troublemaker.
Yeah.
I only bring this up again because I've specifically observed Scrum Masters. I look at them and I say, shouldn't you be the person with the advanced facilitation skills, the advanced interpersonal skills to highlight, hey, don't you think this culture is a problem? But no, they're hiding in the culture because they're afraid to challenge any of these issues. So they'd rather be kind of safe to go along. I would not bring it up and make it such a big thing if I had not seen it more than one time.
Oh, definitely it exists. It's real. It's out there. Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, especially internal Agile coaches. Yeah. And even in that segment, it's people that are coaching at the team level. Yeah. Agile coaches that are primarily focused at the team level are going to just steer clear of anything that is not in the guidelines, right? Sure. The PMO usually hands them a folder and says, this is how you do things. Right. So they're the ones that go around saying, okay, look, it says so here. It's okay to have your daily stand-up to go an hour long, right? That sort of thing.
Right.
But those Agile coaches that are not just at the team level, but they're also really coaching the organization, they're the ones that I would look to bring this up to people and say, we're stifling people here, right? This is not serving anything.
Right.
Why are we continuing to do this? And to be honest, it's still going to be an uphill fight. They'll be labeled as the troublemaker, as you said, right? Not a team player. You're not a team player. Okay, well, that's not why you brought me in, right? You brought me in to hold up a mirror. You can get rid of me. That's fine. That's the easy thing to do. But your problems aren't going to go away.
To the Agile coaches out there who maybe have, like, they've sort of insulated themselves. And they're sort of like, well, I know that challenging the status quo is, like, tough, and I just don't know because it was, like, a lot of people getting laid off, and I feel like there's security in not challenging the status quo. What tool can you give them to sort of, like, to make progress toward challenging the status quo, but also not get fired?
Well, here's what I'm going to say about that. If you're going to just drift along, you're getting closer and closer to that door, right? So I would say pick one fight that you can win, go do it, right? Be brave, go do it. And don't ask permission. That's not going to work too well. But then again, you're not radically changing the core construct of the organizational culture, right? Pick one thing as a practice and say, I don't see why this team should be following that specific practice.
Yeah.
Stay with a team and be driven by results, by data.
Yeah.
And say, here's what we tried, here's how well it worked, right? So we're going to do it again. And then slowly over time, you can get other teams that you're coaching to kind of do that as well. Mm-hmm. You don't have to necessarily make a big deal out of it and say, we're not doing this anymore. We're doing this newfangled way of working. Yeah. You don't have to do that. Just stay below the radar and do it, right? Well, what we used to call guerrilla coaching in the day.
Yeah. If you have this monoculture where you can't challenge ideas, you can't point out problems, and you're afraid of, because that's a lot of what we're talking about, is you're afraid to speak up, right? Then in that kind of culture, if you're afraid to speak up and you're afraid to point out things that are not in the current pipeline, things that you're not doing right now, I feel that your whole organization will have difficulty adapting to new technologies or new trends or shifts in the market or shifts in your customer preferences. And I feel like this whole thing we're talking about now, whereas like new ideas are not accepted or appreciated in our culture. Well, that's fine. I mean, I guess it's fine from the perspective of you're going to have the people running the business and the people you have working until they leave, and then maybe you'll replace them, maybe you won't. Seems like it would be difficult to get people into that culture. But over time, you're going to lose market segment because you just don't have a culture who is willing to be responsive and who's willing to learn from failures. And in fact, I would go so far as to say failure probably is a word that is just not encouraged to be spoken out loud in that culture. So that tells me you're not learning from failure. So if you're not learning from failure and you're not learning from your own personal initiative of learning, for the sake of learning, I'm going to guess that the world, when you look out the window in a couple days, the world is going to have passed you by.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. I think you lose that nimbleness, right?
Yeah.
You lose the nimbleness to respond to the changes that are out there because you're too mired in your own internal processes. Right. So what can happen here is that company is going to perhaps lose customers, lose market share, I don't know. But that's not going to be appreciated by those people that are just toeing the line. We lost a customer, so what? We're still doing the right thing because they're just so ingrained in their current culture, the monoculture.
Well, they're still checking the boxes, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, they're checking the boxes, and that's not served them well, so why keep doing it?
The product management equivalent to me is when I go through an interview and I ask people, hey, in your organization, where do the ideas come from, right? And a lot of people, that's a softball question, usually.
Yeah.
Okay? But depending on your responses, I can dig. Tell me about the last time that you picked the best signal, and tell me about the detractors. And I want to know about the fights because you have evidence, you have data. There's people with their intuition, that say like, well, your evidence is wrong because I know the market. Like, tell me about that conversation. Like, I'm going to dig into the real conversations. Everything I just described is not happening in this culture.
No. I'll tell you what is happening in this culture, though. Right? In this culture, what is happening is, fill out an intake form, and then that's going to get funneled into the product backlog, right? It's like there's no validation, right? There's no verification the customer actually asked for that or why, much less why, right? If you're just taking the customer's word for things, for example, verbatim, that's this culture because you don't want to necessarily be the risky one asking customers why do they want something. They just told you they want something, so go build it, right? That's what tends to happen in monocultures. And the end result, sooner or later, is you're going to have disenchanted customers and they're going to leave you.
Yep.
You'll lose market share.
Yeah. In the culture where you're towing the party line, you're just trying to make your bosses happy because every idea has to be sanitized.
Right.
What the customer wants really is not
front of mind.
I mean, it's really not front of mind. It sounds absolutely bananas to say out loud, but you're not trying to impress the customers. You're trying to keep your job. You're trying to impress the bosses. You're trying to convince everyone that I think like you think.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen, this is really terrible, but I've seen this where customers coming up with certain ideas that are outside of the day-to-day, how you should be working, they're labeled as trouble customers.
Trouble
right?
customers, yeah.
Oh, yeah, bad
problem
customer.
Children, yeah, right.
Exactly. What a shame.
I've seen that, yeah.
What a shame. But that is exactly what happens in that kind of environment. So a person who is basically, like you said, toeing the party line for a while, what happens, right? What happens is you keep your boss happy until they leave. And then someone else comes in and you keep them happy, or they have different ways of working.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, they're going to say, we don't need so many people, right? Because we're pricing efficiency.
Right.
And you could be out. So might as well take a chance and grab the opportunity to make a real difference.
Now's the time where I want to pivot us into what I really want to talk about on this podcast, and what I really wanted to talk about on the Weaponizing Efficiency podcast is there's some underlying need for control that is coming out in all of this, and especially in the point where there's a market downturn and people start getting let go. right? Or entire teams getting let go, or usually it's the offshore teams get let go first, and then the contractors get let go, and then we save the internal employees for last or whatever. And none of this is done by like who supports what revenue stream or any of that. None of that is considered.
No, it's all the consideration here is which tab on the spreadsheet that person is.
And even in the phases that I just pointed out, they might say, well, these offshore people, I know they align with my way of thinking, so I'll figure out a way to save them and move them over
Park
to this
them over here for a while.
You're right. Yeah, I'll consolidate some teams and get rid of. Basically, what they're doing in this phase is they'll get rid of the problem thinkers. Right. That's what I've seen in a market downturn in this. But honestly, like everything that I just described, like it all comes down to like enforcing micromanagement. I need to be involved in your day-to-day work to feel like I understand what's going on. There's a feeling involved here that I don't believe that you're working on the most important thing, that you are aligned with what I'm thinking. There's a mistrust happening.
It comes down to that, really, trust. I don't trust what you're doing, therefore I'm going to tell you how to do something, right?
It's not that I don't trust you because you have broken my trust and proven that you're not trustworthy. It is
your insecurity does
I
that
am insecure.
as a manager, yeah.
That is the issue.
Yeah.
Or I am just not educated enough to understand how to look for a team that is working appropriately on my requests or not. So I don't understand the metrics to look for. Right. I've just not been educated. I've kind of been thrown into this leadership role and nobody's helped me understand what success looks like on paper versus failure or stalled progress. Nobody's helped me understand that. So I feel very insecure about it. So in order to make up for that insecurity, I'm going to micromanage this team. I'm going to take increasing control of the day-to-day of what this team does.
That's a perception thing too. I think in a lot of cases, the middle managers need to have that perceived control, right? Whether they actually have control or not. And what I mean by that is the reality of this is, as soon as you're not in the room, what are people saying about you, right? It's not that you're controlling them. It's that you have a perception that you're controlling them. They're gonna do things to make you happy, right? And in turn, guess what? You're gonna do those things that make your boss happy. That's what this is about. You're not prizing what really should be prized, right? Which is delivering customer value. You're just basically, like I say, keeping your superior happy.
The other thing about standardization is that the idea of standardization slows down individual growth. Like there are less opportunities for individuals to do cool things outside of the box, outside of the norm. Hey, if you want to, if you want to get training dollars over a certain amount approved, you got to go through a process rather than just talking to your manager and then they just do it. Or if you want to get a new technology and bring it into your work center and just play around with it or whatever. What I was talking about before is like Azure Cloud or AWS. AWS is a good example because AWS has so much stuff available to you for you to mess with. So much stuff. Now, I mean, they have AWS in-house has a whole AI ML model management sort of cloud for you to play with. If you don't want to send your stuff outside to ChatGPT because you don't trust ChatGPT to not like steal all your data, because I mean, hey, that's their business model. Like AWS hosts models for you. You can say, oh, I want to use this model for this purpose and I want to set up this thing, right? And you can just do it all in-house. If you just want to try some cool stuff to see what you get from it, but now you got this like, well, I mean, to set up this AWS like application, it costs like, I don't know, like 5 cents per billion transactions or whatever. Like it's super cheap. It's very cheap.
Yeah.
But the point is like, if you don't have any financing, if your financing is controlled by some other board or authority or whatever, and they only meet like once every quarter, and you have to go in front of them to get a budget or whatever approval nonsense or whatever, how much process do I have to throw on top of this before people just say, you know what, I'm just not going to bother.
Absolutely correct. I think the most likely outcome out of that is people just say, I'd love to try that, but I'm not going to be successful here trying to lobby for it, so I'm not going to bother.
Right.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. Here's the way I look at it as a product manager. So, Brian Ohm Software Development Company. Like, Ohm is a cowboy coder. He's writing scripts for all kinds of weird stuff that may never go anywhere. They might never help anyone do anything. He just thinks the output of the scripts are cool, Ohm loves to write scripts because he thinks the output is cool. And often, Ohm will pull an engineer over to his desk and say, look at this cool script I did. Isn't it so cool? And the engineer will say, actually, not only is that cool, that is very useful, right? There is no forum for me to take Ohm's cool script and say, here's our roadmap. I'm going to drop Ohm's cool script into our, just drop it into our roadmap. I should probably get a sound bite to do that. Just drop it into our roadmap because Ohm wrote something cool that now we can write into our main program, our main web application or whatever, and like everybody can take advantage of that. Like Ohm's just like this loose cannon that's writing cool stuff all day, and sometimes he writes stuff that's like, oh my goodness, Ohm, nobody needs that.
Right.
But sometimes you write stuff that is just absolute gold.
So a company that has the heavy process we're talking about here is unlikely to have any kind of forum where people can do that, right? As opposed to what? As opposed to maybe just dedicated time that people are given to just experiment and play, right? And go and create something in Skunkworks or whatever. I mean, you may not use most of it. You said the one thing you use, it can be gold, right? But that's just like benefit side of it. The hidden benefit is two things. The developers are motivated because they get to try stuff, right? They don't feel like they're restricted. That's one benefit. And then the other is on their morale, right? I think maybe they're related. I don't know. But, I'm trying new things out, and maybe if it can be useful to the company, maybe they'll kick a little bit of money my way or something, right? Pizzas, so it doesn't matter. So that kind of thinking is usually not going to be promoted in a company that has the heavy process. Right? You just don't have the appetite for it.
Yeah. Well, also, you're like in a company that has a lot of process for standardization. Nobody's going to do, quote, cool stuff development because they know that the company, like, it's going to be a lot of process for the company to pick it up. If you're in a company where you have like 2 teams or 3 teams and you have a product manager, one product line, one product manager, 2-3 teams, right? And like a CEO, super small company. And you just have a forum like, we have a company meeting every month or every 6 weeks or something like that. And part of the company meeting is people just demo cool stuff. Here's cool stuff that I wrote, that I did or whatever. It may not be code. It might just be cool business processes or whatever.
It could be anything.
Yeah, it could be anything. Literally anything. But maybe people have cool stuff. Hey, here's my script that I wrote to automate this business process or this thing that we're doing or this email script. Like that's a thing I see a lot is, here's a new customer onboards. We don't have a system or whatever, but I put their name in a list, and whenever the new name is in the list, the script picks it up and it sends them out an email, automated email. Or an automated email. Here's the other thing. It's slightly more complicated, but also equally cool. Let's have a script that looks at our login database, and it knows all the users because it has access to the user list, and it looks at the login database and it says, when's the last time you logged in? If the last time you logged in is more than 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, it sends you an email. It says, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. What's going on? Here's a Calendly link. Set yourself up with an appointment to talk with the product manager or with the CEO. The CEO of a tiny little company, a 5-people company. People might be more apt to click a link and schedule time on the CEO to say like, hey, I signed up for your application. I pay whatever dollars a month and I don't want to use it anymore because, you're not servicing my needs as a customer. Well, if the automated email came from and responds to and put time on the calendar of the CEO, when they use the form, you might retain a customer.
Sure. No, you're right. Absolutely. That could work in a small company, in a big company.
In a big company, even if you wanted to write an automated script that looks at your production, even if you can get access to your production database to get the list, writing the automated script and running it on a regular basis against production, big no-no. You have to get approval for that. And then pulling the CEO in or product manager or whoever it is, like that's another. So I guess what I'm saying is, as an individual, trying to look for different ways that you can grow, different ways you can expand and try different things, try cool things. How many different layers are you willing to punch through before you're just going to say, you know what, it's just not worth it? Users that log on to the platform, log on to my website, and like they never get past the activation phase, I'm not going to buy. It's so much work for me to get all the different approvals to talk to these people. Never mind.
They're going to take the path of least resistance, right? They're not going to do that. You're right, because they may get their hand slapped at the minimum, right?
Yeah.
Or they will be yelled at and told to stay in the lane.
That's not good.
No,
that's not good.
Because you're not using the best thing for the job at that point.
And my corporate culture never evolves.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And you get frustrated, right? Because you can not proceed the way you want to.
Right. Yeah, I don't get it. The other thing that I don't get when you're trying to enforce these standards, usually what happens is they do not get enforced consistently across all teams. So now there's all kinds of feeling of, like, even if you wanted to enforce them consistently across all teams, you'll get these feelings of favoritism and these feelings of like, oh, well, those people get what they need, but I never get what I need. Also, I've seen intentionally giving some teams everything they want because they're more vocal about this pushing back than other teams.
Yeah, and those teams may have different relationships with those people that are holding the decisions.
That's exactly right.
And then you have the undercurrent of politics in there too.
Right. Yeah,
right.
That's exactly right. And the last thing I want to bring up, because I think we've talked about this way more than I wanted to talk about this category of standardization, is your relationships with vendors. I heard a story once. Somebody told me a story once where they said, my procurement department requires 3 equal vendors, 3 equal choices to be submitted to them before they will allow me to access procurement funds, even if the acquisition of a software package or a third-party package or something, even if that acquisition is approved by whatever manager, whoever in the organization, the acquisition department, the people that actually like sign contracts on behalf of the company, they require 3 different quotes basically. So even if I know that this one software fits all my needs and I've researched all the different types of software, maybe I've signed up for free trials and I've tried them, even if I did all the legwork, the procurement people still want 3 choices. And I'm saying 3 choices because I know there's companies out there that want more than 3 choices. Mm-hmm. I've heard as high as 6 choices, which I think is ludicrous. So the reason that the procurement department wants multiple choices is because they want to be able to note the cost of all the different choices that we're choosing between. And at the end of the year, they want to say, here's the highest cost choice. And here's a choice that we went with, which assuming it's not the highest cost choice. They want to be able to say, we saved the company a potential amount of money by the difference of the highest choice and the choice that we went with. So they're trying to justify the procurement department's existence by saying, well, if we weren't around, we maybe could have gone with the highest dollar figure. But in reality, usually the requirements and the decisions that go into the purchase are done before any of the purchase recs are even submitted. And the sad part of this is, like, if we're interviewing like 5 software vendors to figure out what cloud solution we have to go for, like I'm engaging 5 different sales departments to do the whole song and dance and to come in and do demos, and I'm wasting a lot of time. Like, I'm going to invite our tech lead, I'm going to invite our product person, I'm going to invite the procurement person, I'm going to invite a whole bunch of people in our company. Yep. When I know, because I've already vetted the solutions, I want to go with this one. And I wrote the requirements to highly favor this one in case the procurement people mess it up for me, by the way. And also, I'm only going through the song and dance because I'm trying to check off checklists on the procurement people's checklist, basically.
This situation you just outlined is real. I've seen this at multiple locations, right? I've seen this. When you mentioned that at the end of the year, they can say, this is the amount of money we saved through prudent vendor diligence or whatever. I bet you they're incented based on that in some way, shape, or form. If they're incented that way, then that's the behavior that you'll get, right? Yeah. And the irony of it is, as you said, the diligence has already been done at a different level. Yeah. You've decided vendor X is the right vendor. You may even have finance for that. You may have financial approval to go spend the money. But procurement's a different department, and they usually have long lead times too for some reason. I don't know why. Because I guess I know why. Because they have to go through and look at the company and all of that, right? The vendor company and all of that. That's fine. So all that time that you're wasting, and at the end of it, they will come back and say, either if you're lucky, they'll say, yeah, you can have the vendor you want, but you've lost all that time. Or they could say, no, this one's better because it meets 90% of what you need, but we're saving X $1,000.
Right. Yeah. And usually the way that this will manifest is for the company to come down with a dictate that says the only people allowed to sign contracts on behalf of this company or as this company are the procurement department or the contracts departments, whatever it is, right? Yeah. We go back to the purpose of this podcast. Like, if you're going to weaponize it, like, it's very easy to say the only people who can spend any money on behalf of the company are these people. So basically the policies they lay down, no matter how bureaucratic or ludicrous or whatever they are, or laborious they are. That's a word I don't use on the podcast.
That's a good word.
Whatever they say goes.
I'd say if you're in that kind of a culture, make friends with these people, because that's the way you're going to get ahead,
Right.
I just wanted to offer something.
But also,
how you
again,
deal with that?
It doesn't help with customer value. It doesn't help with value delivered. It doesn't help with speed to market. It doesn't help with a lot of other things. It'd be better if these people are lending their expertise to the decision process, and I'm bringing them in as experts. The same way I'm bringing in finance people to help me with finance decisions, engineering people to help me with engineering decisions. Again, it's just we like the normal models don't really help you understand how to integrate these non-technical people into your decision flows. And I feel that might be a big failing of the certifications and kind of the whole industry here.
For sure. There's a lot there. Absolutely. I mean, all of those domains that you mentioned, HR, legal, right? All of those play into this whole thing.
Sales, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Standardization. I don't know if we gave a fair shake to both sides of every category in standardization. Like, I can understand it if your company says, okay, we're only going to buy laptops from Dell, for example. I don't know why I'm going back to the early 2000s. Like, I'm only going to buy laptops from Dell, because if we standardize a vendor and say we're only buying from Dell, then we get a solid 20% off of all Dell hardware that we buy, and we only buy from that vendor. Like, that's clearly a savings to the company, as long as the Dell hardware is competitive with other hardware on the market.
But that's an interesting example, because you may have, and this is again real, right? Companies do this, but you may have a legit reason why a developer or some developers need Macs, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I mean, they're expensive compared to Dells, I imagine, even today. Give them those things because they need them to develop things on Mac OS. That's just an example. You can justify those things, though, I feel. How can I develop something on Mac OS when I don't have Mac OS?
Yeah.
But try to make people that are in these other departments understand that.
Right.
Because they see names and they see numbers. So they look at, oh, you want a Mac? No, you can't have a Mac. They're very expensive. Right. We've got this thing with Dell. You can have a Dell. I fought that fight with some companies on behalf of my developers. They just say, oh, how do I develop with that? I'm like,
right.
Good point. Right. And then you got to go fight the fight. Yeah. But process for process's sake, at any time when you're looking at any kind of process, look for the benefit coming out of it, right, to those that are going through it. And if there's no benefit, then question it. Like, just feel free to say, why are we doing this way? But not in an accusatory tone. I mean, just go in and say, wouldn't it be better if we did it this way? Because it's quicker, right? Or, gets us to the end result without having so many stage gates, right? Sign-offs is another big one in processes.
I can't believe we did this whole podcast and we did not talk about the number one weapon of choice, which is handoffs or sign-offs or stage gates or something like that. Like, I think we implied it, but we did not specifically talk about handoffs or sign-offs. I have this thing that I love to tell people as a product manager. I think handoffs are a big waste of time, and I hate them, and I don't want to do them.
Well, in the lean way of thinking, handoffs are a waste of time, and we look to eliminate those as much as possible or minimize them to the point where none are left. But this is real. Handoffs are real because, again, people have that insecurity that I must be able to see things and put my rubber stamp on it, and that's the sign-off. They become bottlenecks. I mean, you wait for people to sign off things, right? And the ultimate is attending a stage gate review meeting and then defending the work that your team has done and then looking for approval from someone who has no clue, by the way, about the functionality you've built.
Right. This is like only things that you get at large companies because I cannot even fathom as a product manager sitting in a room with an architect who doesn't know my business, doesn't know my customers, doesn't know why I'm building things. That basically has no context as to the why. Poking holes in my application. Let me add a little context to what I'm saying. Because I will often put features out before they are ready. And I know that the features are not quite right. So I am expecting, oh, Brian, you put up this new dropdown, but it doesn't have the most obvious option in the dropdown that most customers would expect. I want to pull a dropdown and export this file to PDF, but you only allow me to export it as a PNG and an SVG or whatever. Like, how come you didn't, like, everyone needs PDF. Okay, I know everyone needs PDF, and I know that if I put PDF, that would be the only option everyone chose. But I also know, like on the back side of the house, like in the back end, like I need a PDF processor, and I know I have to pay for it or buy one or do whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that this workflow that leads people to saving off the file is even a valid workflow. So I want to see people go to the workflow, select a thing, and hit download, or select a thing and then back out and not hit download. Again, this assumes that you have good user metrics, right? Good instrumentation in your application. I already know that I am not servicing the customer for what they really need, but I want to see that they take that path in the application. It's really easy to push out fake door features. Like for example, download PDF. Like if we're talking about PDFs, right? I don't know why we're talking about PDFs. I can add a download PDF button in my application. I can just go to developers, say add a download PDF button.
But it doesn't do anything right now.
And it doesn't. Clicking it says downloading PDFs is currently restricted. Will be available in a future release or whatever.
Perfect.
Okay. Architect or somebody says like, why would you allow that? Like just hide it if it's not there because it's going to
many reasons why.
It doesn't look professional, It doesn't look professional.
Says the architect.
Again, they don't know my customers.
They don't.
They don't know what I'm going for. They don't know. And you can say, well, I mean, that's the purpose of the stage gate. That's the purpose of the sign off is so that you can inform them as to the yes. And also, why are they not assigned to my program?
Well, you're in a large matrixed organization, and they just were told to go do this particular stage gate review. They just show up unarmed, unprepared. I mean, this is what I've seen. And they will be blocking you, by the way, because they have huge egos. They're not going to let anything slide by.
Well, yeah.
When they decide that it shouldn't, right?
Yeah, when I bring it up like that to them, of course they're definitely going to be blocking me when I say, like, you're not even involved in my program. You have no idea how I measure metrics. You don't know how.
Professional, Brian. You're putting something out there that doesn't work.
I've heard your opinion, and I think your opinion is hot garbage. We could be in completely different segments of the technology adoption curve. I'm dealing with early adopters. You're dealing with laggards. And you're trying to apply a philosophy that works with laggards, arguably works with laggards, to the early adopters. The early adopters are so happy, or let's even back up to the innovators. The innovators in the technology adoption curve are so happy to have thing that helps them with their problem. They could care less that it doesn't crash every time, let alone that they don't get another export option or whatever. Even in the early majority, like the fact that they have two options in the drop down that work for saving their thing off, and then the main option, which they really would prefer, which is PDF, doesn't work, they don't really care. They're still happy
that won't be
that they have two options. Yeah.
But at least you can validate that then.
You sure can.
Right? Which the architect doesn't think about it that way. You know, they don't think about it that way, that we're validating this based on real customer journey through the product. They don't think of it that way.
I'm with you on the thinking that they don't think of it that way. And by that way, my context is from the perspective of what helps the user the most rather than their own ego or their own views or their own opinions. When you build bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy and it has to justify its own sake in the bureaucracy, it can't get out of its own way. It's not possible.
It's horrible. It's a spiral, actually. So taking this example of the architect at the review, chances are they need to be able to go to their superiors and say, I did 4 reviews today and, none of them passed or 1 passed or whatever. And here's why. Aren't I doing a great job, right? By the same token, they can come to you in your review, they can say, PDF. Oh, wow, we're not going to spend money on a PDF processor. We can build that in-house. We're going to build that. Right. I know how to do it. I'm an architect. Now you're solutioning for things you don't even know the customer actually needs.
I've seen that happen.
Yes.
I've seen exactly the case that you're talking about. Oh, I can build that. Yeah, you don't need to spend money for that. Well, I mean, you can build it, but also, how many sprints are you going to dedicate yourself to my program? And who can I talk to make sure that happens on paper and that you don't get stopped and interrupted? Because my program is about delivering value, and I would be willing to pay to have an uninterrupted stream of value as opposed to trying to jockey for position with all the things that you're involved in. Like, I'm just not interested in that. I feel it is and is not a great example because now I'm like conflicting two worlds. I'm conflicting the Brian product management world of I want to move fast, I want to execute on things, I want to try things and let the customer be the judge and to follow where the customer is leading me. And the other world with this solution architect or whatever is I want to justify my place in the bureaucracy and I want everyone to subjugate their demands to me trying to justify my role. and to make me happy. Hey, it takes very little to make me happy. Just tick the box, subjugate my ego, make me happy, and then I won't be a big blocker for you. But my challenge to that is none of that adds value to the customer.
That's right.
So really just get rid of it. Maybe in our next big, corporate drawdown, like maybe we can get rid of that layer and we can be a bit more lean.
Yeah. I mean, look, good luck with that though. So definitely handoffs and sign-offs are a big drain.
They're a big waste.
They're a complete waste actually.
To all the product managers out there or maybe Scrum Masters that are living in this environment, the customer value would be the way to cut through this layer. I have like my customer value and my direct customers. Like we have a process and it works for us and the customers are happy with it, and let the customers speak on your behalf and try to cut through this and segment yourself off of the bureaucracy. And I even realize when I'm saying this, nobody's going to like that. Nobody's going to be happy with it. You're going to be the black sheep out here by yourself who's carved an exception for yourself in the process, and everyone will hate you for it.
You're right, but that is the right thing to do, right? For the Scrum Masters, you're there to coach the organization. That is the right thing to do, so do it. Right. Feel empowered and do it.
And also keep that resume updated.
Hey, definitely keep that resume updated.
And also like and subscribe to the Arguing Agile podcast, because as a small channel, every like and subscribe helps us. It helps us a lot.